What can a preamp do that an integrated amplifier cannot? Richie in Wickham near Portsmouth in southern England. Wow, that's cool. Wickham near Portsmouth in southern England. Portsmouth. That must be the mouth of a port. Okay. I love these old English ones. Hi, Paul. I have a rather modest 2-channel system used mainly for listening to music and watching online videos. And I'm looking at all the ways I can improve the quality of the sound. I intend to upgrade my main bookshelf speakers, and I'm currently coming to terms with the issues of cables and all the snakes that come with it. I'm convinced that they do make a difference. However, it's difficult to decide at what level to buy in at, considering diminishing returns. My question is, what does a preamp do that a powered amp cannot? I think he means an integrated. In your video on bi-amping speakers, you suggest that there isn't any benefit today when using modern, well-designed equipment, and that it was done due to some older tube amps having poor bass. If a set of your monoblocks would blow away any older bi-amp arrangement, why the need to build the BHK preamp? Assuming you have a high-quality input source and a highest quality amplifier, how is the signal improved with an additional amplification stage and another volume knob in the mix? That's a question we kind of get asked a lot, and it's a difficult one to answer adequately for many people, because much of it has to do with at what level you wish to play, and you had mentioned diminishing returns in here, and that is an issue. It also has to do with separates as a category, which I'll discuss, and it also then has to do with the actual product itself. So if we back up and look at what is an integrated amplifier, and for that matter, what is a preamp? Okay, so let's start with the preamp. A preamp is a volume control, an input selector, and perhaps a gain stage to go along with it. So the function of a preamplifier is to select what input you wish to listen to: phono, tuner, tape, CD. I guess that's kind of old school, isn't it? CD, streaming service, DAC, whatever. So you have a knob or a remote control, and it selects one of those inputs, and then it allows you to turn the volume up and down, and provides either a bit of amplification, which really isn't needed, or some kind of buffering to isolate the input from the outside world, so that as you turn the volume up and down, you don't impact the input or the source that follows, the amplifier out there. And that's sort of the idea of a preamplifier. And a power amplifier is a standalone box that takes an input from something and amplifies it by a factor of maybe about 28, 30, and then converts that higher voltage into wattage that is able to power a speaker. And integrated is when you combine a power amp and a preamp together. And a receiver is a power amp, a preamp, and a radio. That's at least the traditional definition of a receiver. So if we just look at integrated amplifiers, we could, two ways to look at it. You could take a preamplifier that exists and add a power amplifier into it. Or you could take a power amplifier and add a preamp into it. Now that's semantically different. And it might sound like, well, what the hell's the difference between a preamp and adding an amp, or an amp and adding a preamp? Well, there's a very big difference. And this starts to get to the heart of your question. So if I were to take a power amplifier, let's say one of our BHK power amplifiers, there's a box that we've worked on for years to get to be the best sounding power amplifier within its price category that we know how to make. And we're very proud of it. We put all our efforts and energy into it, and we'll put that up against anybody at 2 or 3 times that price, right? As a power amplifier, because that's where we put all our energy. Now, if you want me to take that power amplifier that we have put all our time and energy into and add a preamplifier, well, I can do that. It's really not much more than a bunch of ways to switch the inputs and some more jacks, a volume control of some kind that we can then connect to a remote control, and some kind of interface within the amplifier. But here's the difference. I didn't start out to make a preamp. And so I'm going to have to come up with some compromises somehow, because I have a no compromise power amplifier, and then you want me to add a preamp into it. Well, where am I going to get the power supply? In order to make this thing cost effective, I'm going to steal it from the amplifier. I'm going to share, which is a much better marketing term to use. I'll share the power supply with the preamplifier. And it doesn't take a lot of power, so what, right? But you get where I'm going. A dedicated power amplifier that I add in a preamp is by necessity going to be a compromised preamp thrown into that box, and vice versa. If I have a beautiful BHK or a stellar gain cell DAC preamplifier, and then I want to add a power amplifier, well, I never designed it as a power amplifier. So you see where I'm going. The third alternative is to start from scratch to build an integrated. Now, this is a much better way to go, generally speaking, though that's not usually what happens in reality. But let's say we set out to build an integrated, and we have this price point we're comfortable with. Okay, so we're going to have a preamp and we're going to have a power amp, and they're going to have completely separate sections so that they don't interfere with each other, and the preamp has its own power supply specific to it, and I put my heart and soul into that sucker, and it sounds great as a preamp, and then I put my heart and soul into this power amp with its own separate system, and never the twain shall meet, and it's in one box and good to go. Well, you see what I've done? I've got separates. And the only thing that's different about the separate preamp and the separate power amp is now they're in one box, if I've done my job right. That's not usually what happens. Usually what happens is they are a mishmash. They're put together as best they can to reach a price point, and they're compromised. So the quick answer is a separate preamplifier is in a separate box. It is dedicated, and it goes out and tries to be competitive with every other separate preamplifier, and the same with the power amplifier, and they're judged on their own merits. And because of that, when you use a separate preamplifier, a good one, and a separate power amplifier, the results are usually superior to one of an integrated, and for that very reason. Does it say that we can't do the opposite? No, of course not. I mean, we could build a box that has separates inside and do our best to keep them isolated, but I think you'd be better off with a separate preamp, because there are many more to choose from, and for very good reasons, as I hope you understand in the actual design of these things. That's why we would have a preference for separates. Good luck with your system out there in Portsmouth, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye-bye.